Sergey Brin, Larry Page, and Bill Gates couldn't be here tonight, but they all got together and had sex, giving birth to a two-headed monster named Fran Brown and Rob Reagan. Together, they are the Lords of the Bing.
Welcome, everybody. Thanks for making it to our talk. We're going to be talking to you today about search engine hacking.
Yeah, thanks for coming out. They saved the best for last, and also for the room that's not marked on any of the maps. I'm glad you guys all made it out. My name's Fran Brown. I'm a managing partner at Stack & Lou. With me is my associate, Rob Reagan. And as was mentioned, we are the Lords of the Bing.
So basically what we're going to talk about today is the fact that Google hacking, which those of you that are familiar with it know that kind of started around 2003, 2004 timeframe, has kind of ceased to be developed. No one is actively pursuing it. While the search engines are coming out with all these great new features, we notice that no one is really leveraging them when it comes to identifying vulnerability information or identifying sensitive information leaks. And so we realized that all the tools that existed, they didn't work anymore. They were getting blocked. They didn't have any new features, and we sought out to change that. And we also sought out to have you think a little bit differently about how the largest treasure troves on the internet, that is the popular search engines indexes, can be mined for information. And of course, we're here to blow your minds.
Hence the blow your mind icon at the bottom there.
And so we really decided that, of course, Google is one of our favorites, and also Bing. Bing's kind of been underplayed. There's a couple tools that were developed, but they didn't really allow you to do any vulnerability discovery, only minor footprinting. And we realized that these two have some of the best crawlers out there, some of the largest indexes. They both had caches that would persist data even after it was taken down. And they both had some really nice features. For example, Bing lets you search by IP address. That was something that Google doesn't allow you to do. And that's something I'll get into a little bit later on.
What we see here, how many of you guys are familiar with Google hacking to some extent? We're not going to dwell on the past. Good amount of people. What we see up here for those who don't, just a quick refresher, is the type of information that you can get out of Google or Bing. This is the Google Hack database originally. We could see you get things like by searching for error messages, SQL error messages, or in URL passwords.txt or things of that nature. You could pull up some pretty interesting information. These are some old school examples.
But now we're going to show you what we came up with that's new. We're calling it Google Diggity and Bing Diggity. Basically, we made some command line tools and now a graphical user interface that you can use that allows you to query up against the Google Ajax API, which does not get blocked. You may know that you may have used the SOAP API that they released back in 2005. That they stopped issuing keys a couple years after that was released, and now it's gone completely. It was in December 2006.
As of September of last year, all the old tools that have kind of hobbled along for a few years have finally all stopped working completely as of last September.
But utilizing the new Ajax API, which is kind of designed for people to just build widgets on their site to leverage Google to search their site, we were able to make this nice tool that doesn't really violate any terms of service either. So if that's something you're concerned about, if you're an organization that wants to just monitor Google for information without getting blocked, you can leverage this interface. Has anyone ever used the Google Search custom search engine? It's a free app that Google provides to you that lets you just specify domains that you want to monitor. It basically filter Google results down to only what you care about. So their interface for that is just a web interface, but it also provides a key that you can use as a query string parameter. So we allow you to set up Google custom search engines and plug that into our interface so that you can get down to just the domains you care about. And also we build Bing Diggity, which uses the Bing SOAP API, which is completely unrestricted, and you can mine Bing for information. Some things like enumerating URLs and getting IP to virtual host information with that IP address feature I mentioned before, which we're going to demonstrate. And we also developed the first ever Bing hacking database. Previous tools didn't really do anything other than minor footprinting because no one had gone and done what Johnny Long did back in 2003 and 2004, and he made the Google hacking database. Well, we made the Bing hacking database. Because the feature sets are disparate between the two search engines, we had to do things like convert in URL to in Anchor, and we had to do things like take all in title and convert it to in title. And basically just did some research on the feature set that Bing exposes and converted the known hacking techniques that work in Google to a format that Bing would understand.
And finally, if you are not afraid of potentially violating the terms of service, Google Scrape Diggity is another tool that we are releasing. In that the Google Ajax API is nice, it's updated. One of its limitations, though, is that it limits you to 64 results per query. So if you have a relatively small company or that you're trying to profile, that might be okay. But it makes footprinting a nightmare if you can only enumerate 64 pages for a particular search. As well as it's less known that the actual search sets are different. So maybe in the Google Ajax API, if you search for in title and Etsy password, it might come up with 300 results, while actually going through the Google web interface might give you 4,000 results or something like that. So the Google Ajax API is actually a shorter result set than actual Google. So one of the things we did is, this is not a new concept. A lot of tools have been out that sort of done this. I don't know any tools out from a Google hacking perspective that actually work anymore for actually scraping without getting bot detected within a couple minutes with Google. But we have one that is distributing through a number of proxies, spoofs user agent, refer header, things like that, sets random user IPs, and goes across different Google servers to effectively give you the ability to scrape Google. And now we're no longer limited to 64 results, but you could actually get 1,000 results, which is what your actual limit is through the web interface.
Yeah, one of the things we found in the documentation is that for like the Ajax API, and then even on some of their other interfaces, like this tool actually uses the Google mobile interface, which is just Google/M, which your iPhone goes to automatically based on its user agent, and your Android automatically goes to. It's a slimmed down version of Google. It has no ads or no superfluous links, so it's a lot less going over the wire, and it's easier to scrape. We noticed down in the documentation that they allow you to specify user IP as a query string parameter. So if you're making a widget for people to use and you don't want it to get blocked because it's coming from the same server that's on your site, and it looks like there's thousands of users hitting Google from that IP address, you can specify user IP, which is would be your clients that are coming and hitting your page, and then Google's like, okay, well, we see that how you're using this now. You're just allowing other people to use you as like a middle proxy to hit us, and we'll block you less. Yeah. And so that was one thing that we integrated into this.
Yeah, and we got this. You could see the actual mobile interface up there. We originally were going to use. How many of you guys are familiar with Scroogle? Anyone? It's been in the news a little bit lately, but they leverage a similar interface. That's we're not actually stripping out advertisements as well. So from a legal standpoint, that might help out. That's what I tell myself anyway. Finally, as Rob mentioned, the Bing hacking database, first ever. The tools that have existed up until this point have allowed you to maybe enumerate URLs or unique domains, but we actually have 1,000 Bing hack database entries. One of the reasons that this hasn't happened up until now is that Bing had made some efforts to try to prevent this from happening. And in March of 2007, they actually disabled in URL link and link domain specifically to try to prevent Google hacking type attacks. We found some ways around that. Also limited things like limited file type functionality, only so many, forced us to go ahead and sort through all 1,600 of the Google hack and Foundstone hack database regexes and convert them over, which was fun.
And we also are developing what we're calling the SLDB, or the Stack and Loot database, which is a new search term. Since there's really no one actively maintaining Johnny Long's database, and the Bing hacking database is just a conversion of that, we found a lot of queries that are just around on hacking forums that we included. We have interns actively developing them, and it's something that we plan on building out just so that this still maintains relevance and we're also opening it up to contribution. If you think of something or you know something that you personally use and you want to contribute to this and share it with the community, we'll integrate that into future releases of, it's just basically a flat text file that you can load into our tool to utilize these queries.
Google hacking. So a number of the tools we'll be releasing, I should also mention all these tools and all the research we're releasing is all for free and all available on our website at the Google Hacking Diggity project. But one of the first tools we'll take a look at here is actually Search Diggity, which is the nice GUI interface over Google Diggity and Bing Diggity. Again, this tool is going to be for free. As we could see here, it has some demos ready. Do the wolf one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So part of the fun of doing this research was actually just looking at the results that came back. So one of the queries in the hacking database, in the Google Hacking database, searches for OpenX shopping cart, which is an open source shopping cart system that's known to have vulnerabilities, and it says powered by open shopping cart at the bottom of every page. And one of the things that we noticed was using this was wolfpeople.com. So if you're tired of having clothes that don't have enough wolves on them, I suggest you check this website out, and you may be able to get some clothes for free because they're using vulnerable shopping cart system.
Yeah. And we could see here that it matches the regex for powered by Xcart, which is what it was looking for. Wolf socks.
I personally am going to get loads of wolf socks.
Also, just taking a look at this interface, this may seem familiar if you've ever used any Google hacking tools in the past, for the most part, but again, this time we're using the Google Ajax API, so you won't get blocked by bot detection. You're not breaking terms of service. Also, unlike the past, we allow you to specify more than one domain.
Yeah, most of our clients are Fortune 100 companies, and the previous tools that we saw that were out there were one domain at a time. There's no way that we're going to be able to sit there and click through their thousands of domains to mine this type of information using their tools. So that was just a nice little thing. We realized that this is something that people need.
Yeah, one of our clients actually has 700 domains that they have to monitor. So Google hacking one site at a time was a little bit much.
Yeah, and so this actually ships with the Google Hacking database, the Foundstone Hacking database, and the SL database all preloaded, and you can actually make your own files, flat files, and load them in through the file menu, which we wanted to allow people to be able to do things like that. Also, you can append things to all of the queries that you search, or you can, if you just want to use the simple interface, it's just like typing into the Google search bar, which I think most people do at this point, just because there's no handy usable tools that are out there.
Cool. One other thing is, how many of you guys are familiar with Google Custom Search? Show of hands.
Nice.
So,
do you guys use it often? Yeah, like
so
just a couple hands use it actually on a regular basis.
So it seemed like less than half. Google Custom Search is going to allow us to create our own custom search engines. That's going to take all of Google results. So you're actually going against Google results, and then filter it based on a number of filters you provide. So in that case of that client who has 700 domains, we just created a Google custom search engine for them that filters all of Google and just those 700. Then they could just check every box, click it and go, because...
You can do it with things like wildcards. You can do like star.example.com. So I want all of those domains that are in that wildcard.
So another use of this Google custom search engine is that we've started to create custom search engines that filter false positives. So if you've ever done Google hacking before, one of the biggest pains is you know that the results are completely filled with false positives. If you do any of these SQL errors, it might come back with SQL tutor or whatever, or some forms describing a problem.
It might be a developer posting a question on a forum saying, I have this error page in my website, what does this mean? And obviously that's not a real vulnerability. So Fran actually developed a lot of the Google custom search engines that will say minus forums, minus blogs, minus anything that's typically a false positive. So you can just plug in that key and then exclude those from your search results.
Yeah. So it's still going to get some support LexisNexis. You get that.
And another, so basically this UI combines the Google Diggity and Bing Diggity into one interface. And just by switching to the other tab, you'll see very similar functionality for Bing, where it has the Bing database preloaded and the SLDB preloaded. And you need to use a SOAP API key for Bing. So we actually provided a link for you to just click that, and it'll go help you create one. You just have to associate your live.
Takes 2 minutes. It's free. It's easy.
Free. Just associate your Microsoft account with it and say request one, and they give you an ID to use. And one other difference between this interface is due to Bing allowing you to search by just IP colon an IP address, we allow you to add entire IP ranges, which as someone that does network risk assessments, that's really handy. Sometimes I don't even have any domains to search. I just know I want to see all the domains in this IP address range. And so you can put in classes, ranges, or individual IP addresses in addition to sites and domains, and it'll enumerate all of the queries that you select through all of those IP addresses. And one thing that I know that's really handy with this is it'll allow you to identify virtual host to IP address information. So let's say it's a server farm, like something like Rackspace, they do this where they have multiple domains on one IP address. You could get that type of information. And I've also heard of people identifying situations like a site administrator is actually hosting his personal sites or some other sites on corporate infrastructure. And basically he kind of hides that and no one knows that that's the case, but Bing knows. And I was actually just talking to a penetration tester this morning that utilizes this technique, and he's actually seen that and written that up in reports that you're hosting this porn site on your corporate infrastructure, and so it's something that you could identify with this tool.
What we see up here now is that I just ran a couple of the easy demo versions of this Bing hacking database that we have. That's 1,000 queries. So we can see just going against Bing, it pulls up a number of Snap servers. Just click on this and we can see now that we have access to number of network attached storage devices.
Any questions about this interface? Cool.
This isn't up on the website yet, but it will be by the end of the week. Or you'll be able to download it. And then finally is what we mentioned earlier, the Google Scrape Diggity, which is still a prototype at this point. But as we could see, if I were to go ahead and just query, I could set queries. I can provide a query file such as one of our hacking databases, or I could provide additional domain names, proxy list, Google IP address list, and maximum results that we'd want to have. But just as a quick example, if I were to try to enumerate.
And if you're going to be using this, you're going to end up dumping thousands of results from Google, so you might need to write another program to analyze those results unless you have an entire army of people to read through them.
So as we could see as a quick example, we've obviously gone above the 64 results per query, and with this one query, I've been able to enumerate all 70 URLs that it has for stackloo.com, which is nice. And one of the main things with this scraping feature is that it pretty much enables you to finally use Google for footprinting purposes. Whereas you could use it with Bing if you want to enumerate all the URLs of an application you're trying to assess, or enumerate all of the applications, websites, domains of a particular company that you're trying to assess, or your company. Limited to 64 results per query pretty much made it impossible for you to do any footprinting from a Google perspective. But with this, you get up to 1,000 results per query. Makes it a little more possible. What was it for the demos?
Yeah. So basically the traditional defenses around Google hacking were to just Google hack yourself, which we found to be incredibly impractical. I've talked to some CISOs that said, maybe once a year or something, we try to look through the Google index, or if we're lucky, we might try to run a tool once a quarter and see what's out there, which that's really not good enough to identify sensitive information leaks as they happen. And basically people would say update your robots.txt, update or use meta tags on your site to block things from being indexed. Yeah, you can do that, but that's not going to happen all the time. As sites that are highly dynamic and constantly changing, of course, someone in marketing is going to say push this out, or launch this new app right now before that type of information gets updated. And alternatively, people said use data loss prevention tools, which these things work, but it's hard to identify all the IP that you want to have be analyzed as it's going as it's hashed and going across your network. And of course, policy and legal restrictions. While you should do those things, it's just not practical to think that someone's going to obey those all the time. So all of these traditional defenses
are done. Forget everything you just said. These are all done now.
Yeah.
Traditional defenses are dead.
Yeah, we identified something we think that's going to make actually monitoring what's out there a lot easier.
Protect your neck. Protect your neck, fool.
Yeah, like we said, these tools existed, but they weren't convenient. They didn't have real-time updates. They didn't give multi-engine results. You didn't have any kind of historical ability to analyze what had happened historically. So like even our interface that we wrote just now, you can run it, but it doesn't tell you maybe what existed last week or the week before that. And being able to do multi-domain searching and monitoring is key. And so now I would like to present to you Google Hack Alerts and Bing Hack Alerts. How many people in here are familiar with Google Alerts, the application? Do you guys use that? Google Alerts? Yeah, it's basically cron for Google. It lets you enter in search queries, and then it allows you to set how often you want to be updated. And you can set, one of the options is as soon as something happens, or as soon as there's new content in the index, update me. And typically, I think, do most people here use it to get email alerts? Maybe you have email alerts on your company name or something, you want to see what's going on in the news.
Or if you're vain and you just put your own name in there to see what's going on
really
in the internet.
narcissistic. But,
Yeah.
but basically, what we did was we imported the entire Google hacking database, Foundstone database, and our new database into Google Alerts. So we're looking at over 2,300 queries that we're getting real-time updates as they happen. And we also set it to be via RSS feed. And then imported all those RSS feeds into our Google Reader, which is fully searchable, is cached, and getting, we looked at the Google Trends in Google Reader, and it was getting over 3,000 updates a day. So you're monitoring the entire web at this point for things like vulnerabilities that maybe are disclosed through error messages or sensitive information leaks.
Here we see a pretty good example of one that I starred. James Bond needs help. If you go to mi6.co.uk for James Bond's website, where they sell 007 merchandise, you can see here that it's dumping MySQL error messages to the page. And it's in our RSS feed, are given a convenient little snippet of that and sent directly to us.
Yeah, and one great thing about this being cached and being able to keep this, persist this information that this was identified. Let's say that some users started complaining. They're trying to buy the James Bond 007 series on DVD, or they're trying to buy t-shirts from this website. They're saying, I keep getting this error message that says MySQL, blah, blah, blah. And so the developers go and they just hide that error message. Now the SQL injection is not fixed. It just becomes blind SQL injection. But what you're able to do by monitoring the site using Google Alerts and then having that searchable in your RSS reader is you would be able to say, okay, I noticed this. Did they actually, like now that error message has gone away, but did they actually fix it? We now have the URL and the parameter to test to identify that. And that's something that with traditional Google hacking techniques of Google Hack Yourself, you wouldn't notice that. That would maybe if they, in the timeline of when you ran your first scan versus your next scan, they might have, things might have been there that were worth seeing and then gone away. But now you can always actively be monitoring it.
Yeah. Also, if you're familiar with Bing, you might have seen this when I first pulled it up. If you were to go to Bing,
Wolf sucks.
If you were to go to Bing and you were to type in test, it pulls up results for it. But if you go to the end and append format equals RSS,
you get an RSS feed for anything that you search on Bing. And at this point, it basically becomes like Google Alerts, but for Bing. You're effectively turning any result into a live updating feed as new things are added to the Bing index. So we imported the Bing hacking database and created URLs for every one of those that we could import into our reader as well to monitor Bing's index.
Yeah. So just to bring this home, just to bring it together, from now on, if anything gets indexed by Google or by Bing that matches any one of these Google Hack or Foundstone Hack or now Stack and Loo hacking databases, anything on the internet from this point forward will make it into this list of RSS feeds.
And the beauty of this is we imported all those one time, and now we can share them with you via an OPML file, which you can download from our website for free. It's just the OpenXML format that is used to import information into RSS readers. And you can have this to keep an eye on yourself. You can search it for just things that you might care about. Maybe it's just domains that you're interested in. Or, of course, conversely, since this is Blackhat, people should be aware that this could be used to increasingly expedite the speed in which mass ejection attacks occur.
This is now a convenient, easily importable into Google Reader database of hundreds of thousands of vulnerabilities that are being updated in the tens of thousands per day now, with nice little convenient snippets of the error messages or whatever that you could sort through and look through.
Yeah, so really this just needs to be, we wanted people to know that this was possible just so that we would raise awareness for it's becoming, this is a technique that is much easier and much more convenient, much more practical to be able to monitor the web for this information.
Cool. And this is just going over just what we mentioned, just setting up Google hacking alerts, setting them to be RSS feeds, letting us know as it happens, as we could see. James Bond's in trouble. And we're up to almost 1,000 Bing hack queries at this point being fed to us. And finally, in case you're not interested in just looking at every single new vulnerability on the internet that is indexed by Google or Bing, you might just be interested in, the few domains belonging to the company you are charged with securing. For that, we'll also be releasing through our website. We've built a Google desktop gadget that you can import that takes all of these RSS feeds as inputs and allows you to specify one or more domains or sites that you're interested in monitoring. And if any of those feeds match any of the sites that you're protecting, it'll generate a nice little pop-up in the system tray for you to let you know. So, also coming soon, it's in development now, will be soon. If bringing it to your desktop isn't enough, if you've got to have Google and Bing Diggity alerts at all times, we'll be having a Droid app that'll actually allow you again to set these filters and be generated on your phone for alerts if something matches that.
Yeah. So now we finally have tools that are convenient to use, give you those real-time updates, give you multi-engine results, and have a historical cache for you to be able to search and allow you to easily monitor multiple domains. So all of these being key improvements to making Google hacking relevant again. Now, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Google has been coming out with applications every other month. They're buying companies, they're converting those companies into new applications that are available for free. With their wealth of information, they're just slapping new interfaces on to things that I find extremely interesting. And this gives us all the more reason to continue to develop Google hacking techniques and to develop ways to mine this information, both from a defense perspective, but also to be aware of where the areas are that can be attacked. And so there's things like Google Health. Google Health is going to start mining healthcare information. There's going to be insights for search. I don't know if I've been hearing a lot of people at this conference talk about it, and I didn't realize that a lot of people knew about it, but there's Google Research published a paper on monitoring the information that is the zeitgeist, basically the trends of what people are searching to predict the stock market and predict the economy. And some of the examples that they used are really easy to kind of see the correlation. So if you see that this month people are searching Ford more, there's a good chance that whenever people are buying cars, they're researching what Ford car they want to buy. And so they kind of predicted that profits were going to go up next quarter for Ford. And conversely, the same thing worked with other companies where it was merchandise and large ticket items for sale.
How many of you guys feel comfortable with the fact of that Google's going to be indexing your healthcare information? You see Google Health there in the middle on the right. You guys are cool with that? Sure, fine.
So one thing that we identified as well is that there's opportunities for spear phishing people. So like using Google tools to find things like Eric Schmidt's phone number. And there's all kinds of opportunities when you're mining information, of course, from social networking sites. I know a lot of people there's another talk at this conference covering that. And So we see that Google's getting more into this arena and being able to make it easier to find that type of information. How many people have heard of Google Code Search? Great. Yeah, so basically Google Code Search is their index and interface to search all of the open source code repositories on the web. Things like SourceForge, Microsoft's CodePlex, and even Google's own Subversion interface that they allow anyone to add code to Google Code. And so you can actually search this interface with regular expressions. I don't know, how many people knew that? A few of you? Okay. You can develop regular expressions to search for things like select statement and then request.queryString in the same line to identify SQL injection. Or you can identify things like remote file includes or cross-site scripting. And so let's take a look at some of the things we found with that. This is actually another technique that we're using now to identify vulnerable software that's popular and create Google queries that will find that software. And we actually have an intern working on this as well to build out the SLDB. We can see that some of these are blog software or PHP commenting systems or forum software that an organization, or especially someone that's responsible for the security of an organization, might not even know is being used in their environment. Maybe the developer just was told to build this forum for our website so that our users can complain about our software. And they went and just pulled some open source project and put it on the site. And they maybe just assumed that it had no security vulnerabilities, but no one actually reviewed it. This would enable us to find things like that and publish advisories for them and update queries so that you can search your domains and find out if you're using this software. And so really that's the approach that we're taking currently to, as I said, to build out our database. But conversely, there's the Blackhat approach to this, where you could verify those vulnerabilities and then search the web and bolster the effectiveness of your mass injection attacks. And we actually saw a blog software that that we were able to see had SQL injection in it, and then it has the ability to, it has the powered by name of the blog version number at the bottom. And then, so we could search for that with Google and then search for in URL members.asp. And then we can identify all of those URLs that are exposed that are vulnerable. And from that result, I actually noticed that the blog software was really popular in China. There's thousands of sites using it in China. And so I don't know if there's organizations that would be interested in that, or if that's basically something that we might see as the next mass injection target.
So I think it was 25,000 sites running this blogging software that we now know has SQL injection and exactly where it's at, and can now just go out and start exploiting. And all we have to do is Google for powered by that blogging software to find them.
How many of you are familiar with Blackhat SEO? Great. It's a search engine optimization technique that, which search engine optimization, for those of you that don't know, is what people use to get their web page into the top results of search engines. Obviously, this is very key to marketing and making a profit, because when you search for wolf socks, you want to be the top result if you're going to sell all of your wolf socks.
It's a tough market.
Yeah, it's growing rapidly. But so basically, whenever there's like an event that someone is searching a lot, like Twilight when that came out, and when the World Cup was going on, there's a lot of people searching for those terms. And so what malware writers are doing is they're actually using search engine optimization techniques to get their links to the top results of Google, and so they can effectively acquire more victims.
So what we see here is Google Trends. How many of you guys are familiar with Google Trends? A little bit, some interesting stuff in there. One of the interesting things is that in the last 6 years in the United States, the most often search term is the word lyrics. And if you can imagine, if you've ever heard any songs and you piece together a few lyrics and you wanted to know the name of that song, you go to Google, type in the couple lyrics you know, like Lady Gaga, Poker Face, anything like that, and the word lyrics, and click go. What we see here with this cutout, within a few hours of a Java exploit coming out, a few hours later, Lady Gaga and Rihanna lyrics websites were immediately put up to exploit this Java bug that came out that day, and they used Blackhat search engine optimization to make it so that if you Googled for Lady Gaga lyrics or Rihanna lyrics, all of the first pages, the first several pages of Google results, which look like legitimate lyric sites. As soon as you click on them, you're popped with fake AV or some other type of malware.
And so really the solution to this would be for artists to just sing more clearly.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard that Alicia Keys song, Empire State of Mind? She sounds like she's saying, I've become a wet dream tomato. So if people would know what she's saying, they wouldn't have to search for the lyrics and we'd all be safe.
You watch, next time you hear that song, it's when she said, what dreams are made of. She sounds like, I've become a wet dream tomato. You will not be able to hear anything else now, I swear, when you listen to that song.
But actually, some real defenses that may be effective against this are, and it's something that the major browser providers are actively pursuing because they want to protect their customers, and that is using malware filters. Like the Google Safe Browsing API, Microsoft's Smart Screen Filter, Yahoo's Search Scan. These are all things that are integrated into their search results and integrated into their browsers that will just, you've probably seen the reported attack site when you try to visit a URL before, and that's just kind of warning you that if you proceed at your own risk, this may be malware or phishing. Some other techniques would be using sandboxing software. One of my personal favorites is Sandboxy. It's a tool that basically protects any write access on your system when you're launching your browser within that sandbox. Anytime any file that you download, even if you download a picture or something, it's going to say, do you want to recover this to somewhere that's writable? And it also protects things to access to named pipes, registry keys, and some more level of protection than what running with low privileges in the browser allows for.
Yeah, I think this is important to note. As computer people in general, you probably get asked by your mom or cousin or sister or brother-in-law about they got fake antivirus installed on their computer and they want to know how to get rid of it and how they got it in the first place. And it's no longer from going to malicious sites or shady sites. It's just Googling for Lady Gaga and all of a sudden their PC's taking over. I believe some of the latest studies on antivirus software catching these things are the latest variants are as low as 10%. So it's not really a solution. Even using Google Safe Browsing or Microsoft Smart Screen Filter and some of these things, some of the more recent studies show they don't really help you out that much. Yeah, it's a little better, but it's not really a solution. I think sandboxing is really catching on right now. We've used Sandboxy for a while. I know Dell just came out last week with their own secure browser based on sandboxing, and Adobe just last week, I believe, as well, decided they were going to go the route of sandboxing to try to prevent these things. So you could browse all day to malicious sites or all the fake Lady Gaga.
Yeah, and if you get infected, you just throw that sandbox away.
Just throw the sandbox away.
Now, we're really seeing recently that malware is going crazy with mass injection attacks. Just last month, there was the Asian bot that was just looking to install malware to steal Asian game passwords that got out of control and infected the ad providers for Wall Street Journal and Jerusalem Post. And so this is basically just everyone kind of glazes over the fact that with mass injections, such as like the ASP Rocks worm that was popular about a year ago, step one has search Google for sites that are disclosing that they're vulnerable. And so we kind of just wanted to basically raise awareness that there are some techniques we can use to identify what are those malicious links and alert ourselves to if our site becomes infected with them.
Yeah. Again, in this case, and the news on that up front, how does this attack start with this mass SQL injection attack? We see in the bottom right that the number of websites compromised vary between 7,000 and 114,000, which is kind of a big range of compromised websites. We know that Wall Street Journal was, as well as a few other big ones. But what they did in this case was just wait for an Adobe Flash vulnerability to come out, had all these 10,000 or 7,000 or 114,000 sites already scoped out to exploit. And as soon as that came out, they just pop them and append it to every page. Anyone who comes to this page also redirect them to this exploit. Thereby, anyone who went to Wall Street Journal that day got their browser popped.
And so these URL blacklists are, they're expanding, but they're, it's difficult to kind of know what are in those, what should I be aware of. But when you go maybe in Chrome or Firefox now, you're told that this may be a reported attack site. And I really appreciate the effort on their part to try to maintain some semblance of user protection. But the fact of the matter is that most website administrators have no idea when their site's been infected. This is something came across on the NetSec list on Reddit, where a guy basically, he said, some dickhead emailed me and told me my site's coming up as a reported attack site whenever distributing malware whenever people visit it in Chrome. And so a few weeks went by, he didn't believe him. And then he basically realized, oh wait, it actually is, even though I thought there was no way this was possible. But a few weeks went by before he even believed that this was something that was happening. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if there was a better way to be alerted to if your site's been infected?
Other than the dickhead alert notification system.
Yeah.
Take your neck, fool.
So one concept that we're actively pursuing is, we're just currently calling it malware diggity, is using some of the search engine functionality that exists now to identify malware in a site or sites linking to malware. So one of the features that Bing has is link from domain. And that gets you all of the external links on your site. So if you were to put in link from domain stacklu.com, you get everywhere that we're linking to that's not also stacklu.com. And this could be used to basically run through the open APIs, like the Google Safe Browsing API. It provides you a list of MD5 hashes of over 500,000 of them, of known malware sites and known phishing sites, and I can just hash those, all of my offsite links, and make sure that none of those are malware sites. That's just something that you can, all those URLs you can pull down from Bing.
So how many people here work for a company that has a website that has a lot of people who come to it? A lot of people?
Yeah.
Yeah. How confident are you that right now it's not taking all the people who come to your site and also linking them off and sending them to malware sites?
Do you have any kind of...
One person is extremely confident right over there.
The guy's got some kind of alert system probably, right?
Yeah.
Do you have something monitoring your site to let you know?
Other than the dickhead
Other than
alert.
the dickheads?
Yeah, so if you're a Wall Street Journal, there's a lot of people taking a look at it. You may be in a good spot where someone lets you know ahead of time, but if you are a smaller site or just unlucky, you could be sending all of your users to malware sites, and if you don't really have any way to detect that.
Right. So what this will give you, for some of the more simplistic distribution attacks, like some of these mass injection attacks, this will be a good way to identify if your page is linked to those. And we can utilize the Bing's format equals RSS to just get an RSS feed of any new links that are picked up by the Bing index from your site to run those also through the Safe Browsing API, and then identify if they're dangerous.
So malware diggity, which we'll be distributing through our site again, will sit there, monitor your site or as many domains as you specify for new links off of it, compare those to known malware lists, and then let you know, hey, by the way, you have a new link off of your website and it's to this malware site. You are now distributing malware to all of your user base. And a nice little system tray. That's a lot of text for a system tray, but it's all in there.
Yeah, some of the other features that are out there, like Yahoo Site Explorer, will give you information such as inlinking. So I thought that it might be interesting to actually take URLs that are known to distribute malware and then get a list of all of the sites that they link to, and or that rather that's linking to them. So I can see that Wall Street Journal is linking to robint.us/j.js, which is malware. And this is something that you're kind of just also passively monitoring as new things get in the index. You would be aware of this. I mean, this is not something that's really very complete and wholesome, but it's better than nothing. If you want something that's a bit more proactive and is actually going to do things like deobfuscate the JavaScript of the malware that's embedded in your site, I'd recommend checking out Armorize's Hack Alert. They actually will crawl your site for you rather than relying on Yahoo or Google especially if you're a site that has a lot of static content. The Google bot's not gonna crawl you very often, maybe like once every month or two. So if you want to actually get actively monitored by someone crawling your site, I'd check this out. And so, what we're really talking about, what some of the theories behind this are, one of the other ideas I had actually was to dump all of the top URLs from the latest Google Trends so that you could identify which of those links are known to distribute malware. And so that's something else that we're investigating. I know that there's a lot of malware researchers. Like, I basically wanted to see how, my intention was to set out and see what the malware analysis audience at Blackhat could leverage from Google hacking and Bing hacking. And so I think that's something else that you guys may want to look at as the Google Trends and insight into search. But get back on. So we're basically talking about monitoring your site for external links and identifying all the incoming links, and then comparing that to the blacklists, and then detecting infections, and then alerting you. And so that's a good monitoring system for you. But my friend Oscar actually asked me, is it possible to get someone added to the blacklist? And the repercussions of this could be enormous. So the Blackhat side of this would be doing search engine de-optimization. And that is blacklist your enemies or your competition. So let's say there's another site that comes up that's selling wolf socks, and you want to take them off of the market. You could identify malware links and potentially inject using comment spamming techniques or other mass injection techniques, identify other ways to just generate links from their site to yours, or generate links from known malware sites to them. And then you could potentially get them blacklisted, which at that point their page rank goes to 0, and anytime anyone tries to visit their site, they're going to get a red alert that says it's a reported attack site, and then be able to profit from that by taking out your competition. I don't know if this is something that's actively being done. I know that the algorithms for the blacklists are very closely guarded secrets. As you can see, this is a good reason why. So it takes someone a good amount of reversing and trial and error to see if it were possible to get someone added to a blacklist. But I definitely think it's something worth investigating, because you could be looking at a potentially huge risk and a huge technique. I could see it now, the Russian business network offering this as one of their service lines to get all of your competition blacklisted.
Yeah, or pay them or they'll blacklist you or something.
Yeah, like mafia style techniques.
Yeah, pay for protection. Future directions. That's kind of just a quick overview of a number of the tools and techniques we've been working on, and kind of where we're at right now. In terms of future predictions of where this is going, while Google hacking kind of slowed down from 2004, 2005 to we're picking it back up now, I expect in the near future we're going to continue to see data explosion. So we saw all those Google apps earlier from Google and Bing and Yahoo and people like that indexing everything from phone records to healthcare records to you name it, and to open source software, and making more and more interfaces for searching that and correlating that data easily available and exploitable. I also anticipate some renewed tool development. We've obviously kicked this off, but I think that people are going to start thinking differently about this now, and we'll start seeing some other tools come out.
Yeah, one thing I noticed last week that Google just came out with is a way to make RSS even more real time. One thing we noticed about these feeds is, while they say it's as it happens, typically around 4 p.m. Eastern time, or every day, it's when it updates.
It all seems to happen at 4 p.m.
Yeah, so
as it happens.
That's like when the bulk of the batch update of what they push out when they push out these RSS feeds and Google alerts. And I think they bought some company, and they came up with a protocol named Pub. It's a mouthful, but it basically allows you to set up hubs for RSS feeds to basically optimize it and make it even more real time and more updated. It's doing like long connections to it rather than polling, and there's basically just things are going to get updated faster, more and more from the treasure trove of information that's in these indexes.
And I think in addition to renewed tool development from a security side, I think we're going to see more and more tools leveraging Bing and Google for Google worms and more real-time detection and exploitation, as we saw with the 100,000 website Wall Street Journal example. And then finally, Google's been getting a lot of heat in general lately about security, from losing their authentication code to China, allegedly, and to getting caught grabbing wireless in Europe and things like this. So there's a lot of heat on Google from a security perspective, which I know has caused them to start hiring a lot more in their security department. I think Google hacking will probably be on the lower of their priorities, but with building out their security organization even more, I think that they'll start getting a lot more involved in preventing things like this, going through the results and removing obvious SQL error messages and things
Fred
like
and I
that.
disagree on this. I don't think they're ever going to invest the time and effort into removing things from the results. It's just too much of a liability to them to remove false positives or not. And
You think they just don't care? You're so jaded.
I just think they don't care.
I think they will be getting the proper motivation to reduce some of the risk from these vulnerabilities. And as we saw in the case of Bing, they, in 2007 at least, made an attempt by disabling in URL and a link and link domain, which sort of worked up until now, until we just released this Bing hacking database. So they'll be making an effort as well. And then finally, for future predictions, with the data explosion of not only indexing more information, but also making it available in real time. How many of you guys have ever played with this and with the normal Google interface, would just expanded your options and went to updates? Like one or two people? Basically, Google is now indexing this information, both Google and Twitter results in real time. You could see what was indexed and what happened at 3 o'clock this morning or 5 minutes ago. And they're making this data streaming and in real time so that people are going to be able to take advantage of this. If you find a vulnerability in a certain version of a piece of software, you can in real time be finding who's using this software, what's going on, and automating the exploitation of things like that. Scary stuff.
Any questions? What type of media file? Oh, his question was, do any of the databases have any fingerprints for media files? There's videos, like I've seen results, especially actually from Bing, even though they have restrictions on their file types, I've seen, even in their documentation, there were examples like, find me WMA files on this site. So there's things for music and video. Images, you could bump up against something like the API for the Google image search, but in actual plain results, like if you can specify that file type, it would just be a matter of seeing if that's there. What's particular you're interested in doing? Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
One interesting thing that someone just brought up to me, have you used the new Google image search at all? Did you notice that when you search for something, maybe some of the results are for what you searched for and some of them are what you searched a while back or something else you browsed to, as if they have a little more insider knowledge as to who you are and it has nothing to do with your search results? I noticed it and someone else brought it up to me as well in terms of what information is being collected from that standpoint. But
Any reason you omitted Yahoo other than the deal with Microsoft?
His question was, any reason we admitted Yahoo? And it wasn't so much of it's something I actually would like to pursue more. I really like, they have their PQL, or they have basically a way to write what looks like SQL statements to their search interface. And that's something I'd like to investigate more. It's just more of a matter of what we had time to do for this presentation, but it's something I would definitely like to pursue more. Especially around like the site explorer, because there's a lot of good, valuable information there.
cool. They're not open source, but they're free. So
Yeah.
and there's not going to be a commercial. All the updates will be for free versions.
I don't think so. I mean, that was kind of Microsoft's approach to it. Of course, maybe Fran disagrees with me. I think he kind of thinks they might take some of that away, but I think they consider the value of their user base more important than the abuse that happens with this. Because I know that some of those advanced features is what brings myself to Google and a lot of other users. But I think, will invest more into trying to detect abuse, like try to bolster their bot detection, and try to find a balance there to prevent things rather than taking away features. Any other questions? Well, thank you for coming.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.